I guess I'm starting off. First off, thanks a lot for inviting us to tell you the story of one of our summer's cross-country adventures. We flew from Bellingham to Nantucket, KCK, which is a trip I've wanted to do for quite a while. I have family that lives there. My niece, with whom I'm quite close, has lived there for almost 30 years, and I've probably been there 5 or 6 times. And I always fly over there from Boston, and you're flying, day and night on a Cessna 421. I'm thinking, I could do this. This would be really fun. And 2 other times we've tried it, and we were blocked by weather, and another time we had some mechanical problems. It took a while to get fixed, so we canned that trip. So this summer, the weather cooperated for the most part, and we made the trip. We had not planned to do any talks about this, so this is a cobbled together presentation. We've took some of the pictures we have, nabbed some pictures from the internet that we didn't have, and also threw in a few Gary Larson cartoons just for the heck of it, because he always makes life a little better. A little bit about ourselves. Betsy soloed on her 16th birthday before she went to the DMV back in Virginia to get her driver's license. Good. She's been flying off and on since then, but has been a certificated pilot now for about 16, 17 years.
Something like that.
Yeah. Bill soloed a week before his 65th birthday. Right on. But, and I've wanted to fly since I was a kid. I used to have airplanes hanging in my ceiling, and for a number of reasons, I never had a chance to do it back where I grew up. And and then I was working long hours, and I realized, I couldn't even keep a date to go to ground school, which I had signed up for, so it was pretty clear I was never going to be competent. So finally, when I got to be 65, there was a window appearing there when I could start flying. So on our journey, the crew on 1093 Golf was our navigator, Gracie, who's freely walking around, still navigating her way within this space. And then we have, here is Bill, who is PIC on this leg, and you can see this is right after we took off out of Bellingham, the harbor in the back. And Betsy is the PTP, which is the pilot taking pictures. And in this leg, she's pilot monitoring. Betsy, tell a little bit about the background of our Baron.
I love telling this story. Bill was looking for a tug for our 182. We have a 2001 Cessna 182. Bill was looking for a tug, and he'd been looking for a while. He does thorough research. And so he called me at work one day. I was at the hospital, and he said, I want you to come out to the airport after work to look at this tug. And I was like, I don't need to look at a tug. I trust you. It's tug. And he goes, no, I really think you need to come out and look at it. Okay, all right, fine. I'll come out and look at it. So here's the tug, and it was attached to this airplane, which was also attached to this hangar. Excuse me. So, slightly surprised, we became the owners of a Baron in January of 2020. We were the proud owners of Baron 1093 Golf in a very nice hangar with a very nice airplane tug. It is a heated hangar, in case you guys ever need to know that, and it does have a bathroom, so come on by. We, however, did not have our multi-engine ratings. We kind of got the airplane before the horse there. Nor did we have any inkling that COVID was on our doorstep, and we were just about to enter a global pandemic. But we kept rolling, and in July of 2020, I got my multi-engine rating down at Regal Air with none other than Rick Luke. And then in September of 2020, Bill got his multi-engine rating. Now, I want to explain, Bill is not a slow learner. Bill had a shoulder replacement in that time. So I was able to get back into training before he was.
I'm a slow learner.
So here we are, 4 years later. We both have our multi-engine ratings. I now have my single and multi-engine commercial. And we've flown the Baron all over the place, to Oregon, to California, to Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, you name it, we've been there. And now across the country, back and forth twice. I'm not very good at this. There we go. Okay. So Bill wants to tell you a little bit about the Baron.
Okay. This is a Baron 58. It has, you should know, it's a light twin. It has normally aspirated IO 550s, generate about 300 horsepower. We cruise at about 185 knots. The endurance is about 6+ hours. It has 194 usable with extended tanks, which is great until you have to stop and get them filled up, and you kind of wonder if your card's going to maybe not pass the kiosks. Its endurance far exceeds the human bladder, by the way. It can go 6.5 hours. Best I can tell, the usable human in a plane is about 4 hours before you have to stop or figure out some other way to handle that. And for avionics, we have a G600 with synthetic vision. We have a GTN 750 for the primary navcom, 650 for backup. Have a TX 345, I think it is, and then a GFC 600. When we got the plane, this was previously owned by Gordy Harang. I imagine a number of you folks know Gordy, but he had put in the original G600, which we were very grateful to have, and it had a S-Tech 55, which stopped working in the first year we had it, replaced it. Betsy and I both were much more comfortable with the GTN 750s, which we have in our 182, and didn't really want to end up learning a 530 and a 430. So felt it was important for us to change it. And then has a G4 engine analyzer. So as I mentioned, we were going to Nantucket for a family gathering. My family is my niece's 60th birthday. As I mentioned, I've wanted to do this for a long time, and it looks like it was actually going to work this time. So, first leg. We're going to each narrate the other person's leg. That way they were observing while the other person was flying and get to remember more about the trip.
So day one, leg one, is Bill's leg. We're flying from Bellingham to Livingston, Montana. We are in search of the cheapest fuel in the country within range. So we're flying over the Cascades and the Rocky Mountains, which brings up, some issues of altitude. It brings up issues of oxygen use, things like that. But once we're established on our we're established on cruise, we're up at 13,000 feet, we've got the oxygen going. Bill's absolute favorite thing to do now is to use his special radio announcer voice and play a little scene from the Air Safety Institute pilot manual. And so over the intercom, I hear...
It was August 11th, 2023, when the owners of 1093 Golf took off on their flight across the country, assuming all would be well. You've all heard those, right? And every time I do it, Betsy goes, "Do you have to do that?"
So so I am deer in headlights, looking everywhere for what's wrong with the airplane. So thankfully, the engines are all just absolutely fine. We check out all the engines. There's nothing wrong with the airplane. It's ticking along. It's running like a sewing machine, as a friend of ours likes to say. We actually had, once we got above the clouds, we had a very smooth flight over to Livingston. We put the oxygen, when we know we're going to altitude, we put the oxygen on almost before we leave. It's all ready, it's in our laps, we're ready to go, and as soon as we crack 10,000 feet, it's on our faces, it's going. Bill's is usually a little bit higher, just because he doesn't process oxygen quite as well, it just doesn't breathe as deeply.
It's because he's older.
So we do carry a pulse oximeter with us. Really handy tool to have if you're going to be flying up above up above 10,000 feet. So this is our route. It's about 561 nautical miles, according to that. And took us about 3.5 hours. And I think mostly our route is chosen for airways and terrain clearance. Now, the other thing I'll tell you is that we do file all of our cross-country flights on instruments, whether we're going in the clouds or not. Just we find it's a lot safer and it's more consistent for us. So here is Mission Field, KLBM, Lima, Victor, Mike on the sectional. It's in a nice big open plain with mountains around it. It's absolutely gorgeous. Couple lessons we learned on this trip was it's really handy to know where the kiosk is for the fuel, because we had to look all over and it turns out it was hidden in their maintenance hangar. And it was also really handy that we had our own tools with us, because the grounding wire for the fuel was not functional. Somebody had tied a knot in it. So we were there with our screwdrivers trying to fix it, and we managed to fix it so that we could safely fuel our airplane. It is a fairly busy airport. It's just east of Bozeman and just west of Billings. So they're getting a lot of jet traffic in there, but nice folks. And then one other little lesson we learned on this one was always keep your hand on the wheel when your autopilot is flying. So as Bill is coming in, he's doing a visual into Livingston, but had it on the autopilot. We let the autopilot fly it quite a bit. And as he's turning onto his base leg, the autopilot just completely shuts down. So all of a sudden, but you know, we've got plenty of altitude and makes a perfectly good landing. And but we didn't really know what the problem was, and we were going to try to find out soon.
Yeah. So that, just as my comment to you, it was a non-issue, but it just kind of gives you a little bit of an unsettling feeling of like, what are you going to do when maybe things aren't so nice and easy? But we have to all prepare for that, right? The next leg was from Livingston to Waterloo, Iowa. So 800-mile trip. As you can see here, we've got ground speed of 236 knots. We don't get that on our own. That's with about 50-knot tailwind.
Again, up around 13?
Yeah.
Around 13.
I think we were a little lower than that because we were over the Rockies.
We were at 11 there.
Okay, oh, I didn't even look.
And this is the route we took. There was an air show in Billings, which you can't quite see, so we had to deviate down from there and then up and down through the MOAs, and otherwise it was a pretty easy flight from there into Waterloo. This is one of the games I like to play when Betsy wants to take a break when she's flying. I'll say, okay, why don't you just relax a little bit, and I'll get in and go, oh my gosh, it looks like we're in the turbulence. She doesn't think it's funny anymore.
I always expect it, though.
Yeah. So here's Waterloo, low-lying terrain all around as you can see. The altitude of the field is 800 feet.
Is there any terrain in Iowa?
Excuse me?
Is there any terrain in Iowa?
No, and I have a slide to prove that. We'll look at that in a second. And this is what Waterloo looks like. This is dry. The SBO is right behind me. There's corn there, and then there's on the turnaround in front of me. It would have been between here. There's another. They grow corn at about 200 square feet. And this is just some of the clouds we saw. Took a picture of on the way over there. There's, in the Midwest, there's always phenomenal cloud developments and weather to deal with, of course. And this is the little FBO at Livingston. Nice folks, reasonable fuel. And then you get there and you have to find a place to stay when you have a dog. And Betsy's going to talk about that in a second.
So I do most of the dog wrestling on our trips. And do any of you fly with pets? Are you interested in flying with pets? So the way we've managed it is we carry a credit card with a very high limit on it. Flexibility is absolutely key. I don't make reservations. If we're going on a long cross country like this, I don't make hotel reservations ahead of time. I do a ton of research. I research the hotels in the area. I research the hotels at our alternate. I research everywhere. I'm always looking for a hotel that's pet friendly, that doesn't charge $100 a night for a pet, and that has some place I can take Gracie for a walk. And then if we're really lucky, it has some food choices nearby. Logistics are always an issue when we get there. Yes?
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But does the dog need oxygen too?
So, there's some people who think that the dogs do need oxygen. We've never been able to figure out a way to give her an oxygen tent. So we've decided that she's fine.
She does what she's doing right now. She just goes to sleep in the back of the plane.
No, dog doesn't have pilot duties. Dog can nap.
Dog can nap. She does go to sleep. I'm sure she has some hypoxia issues, but they haven't showed up. Yeah. Now, one of the reasons I intentionally don't make hotel reservations is I don't want to have the added pressure of we have a reservation there, we have to go. It's just silly. So I spend so I get on the phone as soon as we get on the ground, and I find us a hotel. Sometimes we can get a hotel shuttle to come pick us up. It's very rare. Every once in a while, we can get a crew car and make some arrangement with a crew car. It doesn't happen very often. So usually we're either getting a taxi, an Uber, or renting a car.
And Uber oftentimes won't take pets.
I think they will now.
Oh, they? Okay.
Yeah, when we first started doing this, they wouldn't. She has her own, the other thing I was going to say is that it's not about traveling light. She has her own dog bag. She has a travel bag with bowls and food and treats and blanket and a beloved toy or two. And it's not cheap. And you can't leave her in the hotel room by herself and go get a decent meal. So you have to have a rental car to take her with you, or, it's just logistics. But it is kind of handy to bring her along because everybody loves her. She's a sweetheart, and you never know when she's going to seize the controls and save the day. So we did.
Yes.
Let me just run back and see if I can make this play while you tell them about how much fun we have with the thunderstorms.
So we had seen some unsettled air and unstable weather to our north coming in, but it really wasn't an issue. We landed in Livingston. It pretty much settled in. But then this is what it looked like at night out our window. There's just a little bit of thunder and lightning out there. Of course, then you wonder, it would have been nice if they had hangar space, which they didn't. But this went on for hours that night. Oh, yeah. Kind of stuff we just don't see in the Northwest, but it definitely happens frequently there. Okay. Okay, day 2, we fly from Waterloo to Arnold Palmer Airport in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Latrobe is kind of a place we stop because that's where I went to college, and also my college roommate lives there. So it's a great place to meet him again and spend some time with him. This is the kind of stuff we dodged that day, though. That weather system we saw in Iowa was part of a larger system that was moving towards the northeast. And we found that storm scopes, onboard Fisby weather, and we have onboard radar as well. It was very helpful in terms of knowing where we need to deviate.
Now, go back one real quick. That picture, we did not take that from the internet. That's from our phones. Hmm? That's a picture from our phones.
We were flying right past that.
Yeah.
So talking about Iowa and elevations. Since we took off of Waterloo, this is what it looked like for as far as you could see in every direction. Oh, yeah. And I texted Larry Moss, who's one of my partners in practice site from which I retired, and he grew up in Sioux Falls, Iowa. I said, Larry, it's a lot of square roads and sections out here in Iowa. And he said, yep, we like it orderly in Iowa. But it was like you look at it and you go, man, when you come from the Northwest, that is not very appealing territory.
It's better than eastern Montana and western North Dakota.
They don't have mountains, but they have 2,000-foot radio towers.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is the route we took from Waterloo to Latrobe, which is just a little east and a little north of Pittsburgh. This is where we were deviating around a big chunk of weather, which we'll show you shortly. Otherwise, a fairly uneventful flight, just 650 miles, average 206 knots, still having a nice tailwind throughout the whole stretch across the United States. As you know, it's really nice going east, not so nice going west. And this is what it looked like. This is Lake Erie. These are from the storm scope. Those are all lightning strikes just north of us. We felt nothing where we were, but we could see 20 to 30 miles north of us. You did not want to be up there. It was not a place to be. And you could say when you looked at those, they were definitely sort of threatening clouds. Fortunately, we speak English, so as these clouds say, hey, what are you looking at? You want some trouble? You found it. This is on the right base into Latrobe. This is my alma mater. And this is the Arnold Palmer Regional Airport, which is KBLI, Latrobe Airport. It's a very nice field. It has a very long runways. As you might know, Arnold Palmer was a pilot. He flew a Lear, and then he flew 5 different citations, and his last jet was a Citation X. And you can see it, this is the front of the FBO, and of course there's a bronze statue of Arnold Palmer, who brought a lot to that community. When I was back 2 years ago for a class reunion, I spoke to one of my class members who was on the board of the college, and he said, how did they get into flying, and was it fun, and was it a good thing is that something we should think about for the college? Just this year, using the Latrobe Airport, they started a airport management and professional pilot program, graduate program, not graduate, but a baccalaureate program. So it's really, it was kind of nice. It seems like they heard me and they said, this is something maybe we should do for our students. Okay, this is my roommate from college, George. He picked us up at the airport. Okay, which one had the basketball scholarship? Any questions? It wasn't Bill. And we were there one night. One other thing about it was when we landed in Latrobe, they said that there were tornado warnings for western Pennsylvania, which no one had recalled having before. And fortunately, we were able to get our plane into a hangar, which was the last base they had. And they said, you get this space, whoever comes next is just out of luck. I don't care what they're flying, and you kind of go, thanks. Okay. This was my leg.
Yeah.
I would narrate this.
So I think I got 2 legs back to back because it was Bill's dream to fly his own airplane into the airport at Nantucket. So this was his long anticipated flight. The weather was, this is early morning shot, I think, of the weather we saw. It was clearing to the northeast. So it was heading, the system was heading north, and we were a little bit south of, you'll see in a second, we were a little bit south of Nantucket, so we're going to be flying a little bit northeast, but the weather's clearing ahead of us. But we still have, some stuff to go around, and we're aware of it. So some of the issues that we were a little bit nervous about flying in through New York airspace, Boston airspace. We come from the West. We talk slowly. We're nice. And Bill, as you know, doesn't hear perfectly anymore. And so he was a little bit worried about the cadence of speech. And at this time, part of our cockpit resource management, we'll talk about that a little bit, the pilot flying was doing the communications as well. So I said, look, Bill, you know, if you start having trouble understanding the controllers, I'll just do the communication part. But we actually managed okay. And as Tom knows really well from living in Massachusetts, and I'm sure most of you have been on the East Coast, weather is always a factor on Nantucket Island, it turns out. Always, every single day it's a factor. So we kind of enjoy our summers out here, but it's kind of a challenge. So we flew from Pittsburgh, and then we were vectored around New York airspace. We asked the controllers if we could, go direct, and nope, that's not possible, sir. And then we were vectored around Boston's airspace to the south. And then this little dodge here, this little divot here is flying around a cell.
It was the weather you saw on the previous radar.
There's a cell just sitting right there over Nantucket. And then we're coming around and then getting vectors in on an approach and joining this big line of jets that they've all been backed up waiting to get into the Nantucket airport. And it is really fun flying a Baron in between all these jets.
Side.
Oh, sorry, I keep bashing somebody with the pointer. So
This is that weather buildup that was just south of Nantucket Island that we were going around. That's out over the Atlantic.
So there's Nantucket on the sectional. And I was surprised. I kind of thought that we would feel like we were way out in the Atlantic. I never felt like we couldn't see land. I was a little bit surprised about that. So we did fly a full ILS 2-4 approach into Nantucket. I think Bill broke out at about 1,000 feet AGL. And there we are getting vectored in we don't have a picture with the traffic on it, unfortunately, but it would have been fun to see all the jets that we were lined up in between. And the controllers are asking us to please maintain maximum forward speed. Yep, you got it. We'll maintain exactly the maximum forward speed we want to on our approach. So when we arrived on August 13th, there were 30 plus private jets parked on the ramp, extraordinarily busy airport. And as you can see, the twins are these tiny little things over here. And that's where we parked. And I gotta tell you, the cheapest thing on Nantucket Island is twin parking. It's $10 a day. You couldn't get a cup of coffee for $10 on Nantucket. They really had excellent service, but if you want to fly into Nantucket, please do, but please just go in on instruments and get the controllers to help you in and line you up with the jets. I don't know, I didn't hear anybody coming in VFR, especially on that day.
There's weather that day.
And if you want a hangar, go somewhere else.
They have no hangar space.
Yeah.
How about fuel price?
I don't remember. It wasn't Livingston. Fuel price.
It wasn't that bad. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't outrageous. Livingston, though, was about $5.25, and I think it was probably $6.85 or something like that in Nantucket. It's about what we pay here. It wasn't outrageous.
Okay, so you talk about Nantucket.
Okay, so in Nantucket, unfinished clapboard buildings are everywhere, including the airport. So as you pull into the ramp, the tower, of course, this is what you see. For the GA side, of course, there's the ramp side here. We were about a mile this way, not quite a mile, but it was easily 300 or 400 yards to take everything back to exit through here. And then the passenger side is also a very nice small airport. Very busy, lots of both private jets and also a lot of service on Cape Air back and forth to Boston and to New York. Okay, this family I came to see, this is my niece who turned 60, my nephew, her brother, and this is just her husband. While we were there, we went out fishing. Betsy was driving for a while and she couldn't figure out why there was only one control on this thing. It's like, there's not a prop control? All you have is throttle? How does this work? And there was still weather the next day. As you can see, we ended up getting pretty wet. Just a quick side point, just off of this same area, this is right where that weather was coming in. My niece's husband, my nephew, and 4 other people were in that storm in this boat. It's a little 24-foot open cockpit boat. And they came in horrified and soaked. I mean, one of the young girls, she's 28 years old, was like just about in tears saying, I thought we were going to die. Okay, we didn't catch any fish on our day out fishing. This is what, for those of you who are fishermen, this is what they were fishing for, which are false albacore. The next week, of course, you should have been here next week, or you should have been here last week, but the week you're there, it doesn't work out so well, right? Just one more thing about Nantucket. Nantucket is about 430 square miles. 40% of it is in conservation. It's 14 by 3.5 miles, so it's really not a very big island. There's a population of year-round residents of 14,000, and in the summer it's 80,000. So that's what you see on the ramp when we were there. Those are the, and there's a lot of well-heeled people coming from New York and Boston to their nice places out on Nantucket.
If you read the comments about the Nantucket airport, you also get a range of really interesting experiences, because there are people who have to sit next to other people in the passenger area, and they don't like that very much. So as a GA pilot reading these comments, it was pretty amusing.
Yeah, but the FBO treated us very nicely.
They treated us fantastic. Yeah, we were treated so well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So after a week there, you're ready to go home, right? And we left Nantucket, I think, on the 24th. We're ready to go.
No, it wasn't the 24th. It was the 19th.
Oh, 19th. Okay, so we didn't stay there as long as I thought we did, but it was a week. Yeah. So this day we flew from Nantucket to KIUA, and I want to tell you.
Canandaigua.
Yeah, I couldn't say that. That's why Betsy flew this way. She picked the airport and she said, "What's the name of this place we're going?" I said, "Canandaigua." She said, "No, you're not going to butcher this, no."
Now you know how a New Englander feels to say Puyallup.
Thanks, Tom.
Loomy Island.
Yeah.
So as you can see, ground speeds are a little slower now because we got headwinds. It was only a 350-mile leg. Nice little airport. Coming out of Nantucket and around the Boston area, it was, up here in the Boston area, was busy. They're changing frequencies probably every 5 minutes, just repeatedly changing, but it was all straightforward. They're just handing you off. You didn't get diverted. It wasn't like you were changing headings and altitudes frequently. You get one heading, one altitude. We've stayed high enough so we wouldn't mess with the majority of the traffic. So we stayed up around 800 or 8,000 feet and just went fine. And Canandaigua, this doesn't work so well.
Whoa.
I apologize for my lack of ability to use this real well. Am I going the right way? Yeah, here's Canandaigua. Nice little airport, non-towered. Fuel was reasonably cheap. Large lake near there, pleasant weather. It was really just a nice journey from there.
I grew up 20 miles north of there. I grew up 20 miles north of there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is everybody?
Okay, and the next leg is mine. Betsy will talk about that one.
So we take off from Canandaigua. Beautiful sunny days. You could see not too much weather, although we did end up getting above the clouds as we got over into western New York. So we were flying to Waukesha, Wisconsin, which is just east of Milwaukee. Sorry, just west of Milwaukee. I went to school in Madison, Wisconsin, for a number of years, and so I wanted to get back to Wisconsin, but we decided not to go to Madison, mostly because the hotels were too expensive. So we went to Waukesha. We were actually flying in just west of Buffalo. We get into Canadian airspace. And so we flew right over Canadian airspace all the way to Michigan. Very, very, very nice controllers, as you know. And then we have about a 40-mile journey over Lake Michigan. And we could have diverted way around, but decided not to. We kept telling ourselves we have 2 engines. That's the reason we have 2 engines. And we were above the clouds. So we weren't sitting there watching all the waves underneath us the whole entire time. So we got back into the friendly Midwest. We got to the Waukesha airport. And wow, this is kind of wacky. But it's in quite busy airspace. It's right next to Milwaukee. I think we just got vectored in to the north a little bit and then came in and landed south. It was, from what we remember, it was very straightforward. And the one funny little issue is that if you're landing on 1.8 or 3.6, you have an asphalt and concrete runway. So it does give you a little bit of a funny visual as you're coming in.
I was flying that, and you're kind of going, where's the runway? It kind of stops. There's that little thing between there.
But we got lucky enough on this leg that I found a hotel that was outside of town, but they gave us their crew car for the night. And they didn't really need it the next day at any specific time. So we found this hotel, and right outside the hotel, it had this giant water park associated with it. So that was a little odd, but there was a magical Christmas trail, and there was like this funny little Christmas trail that somebody has created in the woods, and I mean, it was August. There was no Christmas. There was no lights. But this is a little farm scene. Those are plastic horses and cows. Gracie and I had a great time. There was a little bear Christmas village. It was a very lucky find. And I came back to tell Bill about it, and he didn't believe me.
Okay. Next leg was a long leg. This is a single leg flight day. We were flying from Waukesha to Billings, 186 miles, 5.9 hours in the seat. We were in weather most of the way from around midpoint on, including an approach down to about 400 or 500 feet going into Billings. Betsy flew that leg, did a great job. Just as she was being vectored, right about here, she's going from nav to heading on the autopilot. It did the same thing it did to me going into Livingston. The screen goes blank and you got no autopilot. And Betsy said, well, okay, I guess we fly it by hand. And so she just got the controls, a little tiny bobble maybe, but then just flew all the rest of it by hand. Did a great job flying in on this approach.
I was pretty busy flying in, and the controller came to me or radioed and said, the person who flew in right in front of you broke out at about 4,200 feet. And I was like, 4,200 feet? You know, I'm used to Bellingham. Like, 4,200 feet? That's awesome. And then it suddenly occurs to me that the airport's 3,800 feet. That's different than I thought.
Yeah, there was only 500 feet from the ground to the clouds. Yeah. And this is just the Billings Airport. We had plans spend a night at Edwards Jet Center, We did have them put in the hangar because of the weather, again, not knowing what's going to come with it, if there's going to be thunderstorms, winds, and/or hail, for example. Sounded good. Yeah, we have hangar space. Don't worry about it. Turned out the fuel was the most expensive on our trip. The hangar was $250 a night, which we didn't know about. Right. Last time we'd been there the year before, 2 years before, was $100. And I said to the lady, it's like, isn't that a lot of money for a hangar for the night? She said, well, it's a twin-engine airplane. I said, well, it was $100. We were here 2 years ago. She said, well, that's a long time ago. But otherwise, Billings was a fantastic town. It was just architecturally very nice and advanced in the city area. Great restaurants. Really had a good time there. The only other issue was we also, again, there wasn't Uber. They didn't have a crew car, and we said, okay, we'll just rent a car for the night through the FBO. We drove 10 miles, and it was also $250. So it was the most expensive stop. It was much cheaper in Nantucket than it was in Billings. And the next day we headed home.
So now we're flying Billings to Bellingham, BIL to BLI. I can't tell you how many times we had to put that into the ForeFlight to make it work. This is Bill's leg. We are pretty fatigued by this point because we've done. This is our third hard day of flying, but we're doing well together. We are going to have to be on oxygen, so we get the oxygen ready to go. And yes, we've had it filled up. I can't remember where we filled it up, but we did fill it up. And one unfortunate thing about the Baron is that it does not have onboard oxygen, so we take 2 travel tanks with us. And generally, we just put the pilot on one, and we put the co-pilot and the passengers on the other. But it lasts for a good 6 hours in the air. We got into some bumpy weather over the Cascades and did the ILS 16 approach into Bellingham and made it home. It really was relatively uneventful, I gotta say, but we did, learn a few lessons, and I'd like to say that we are not rocket scientists, but we are really good pilots, and we're really safe pilots, and we're really conscientious pilots. We do work hard on maintaining our IFR hand flying skills when we go out in the area. We use both the autopilot and we hand fly our approaches, just because you never know what's going to happen. You never know when it's going to crap out on you, right on your approach. We look very carefully at weather forecasts, flight planning. We have FISB weather en route, and we have our radar. We're always ready to divert. We always have an out. We're always thinking about what could go wrong, what can we do different, where can we go if this doesn't work. And we've had quite a few experiences in bad weather together. We know to trust each other. We know what our limits are. We had a situation where we were flying out of Twin Falls, trying to get home. We ended up diverting to Boise because the Baron got iced up. It is a Fiki plane. It is, we're permitted to fly in known icing. We have boots. But we couldn't get rid of the ice fast enough. So we got to an airspeed that I looked over at Bill and I said, I think we've passed the lower limit of the airspeed we're willing to accept. We're diverting to Boise. We called the controller and I said, we're diverting to Boise. And he said, okay, give me a minute. And I was like, nope. You figure it out, I'm headed there. We review emergency checklists, and this is part of what we do. It's one of our favorite ways to pass the time in the airplane when we're flying over orderly Iowa and North Dakota. Pull out the checklist and start going through them. What are we going to do if? What are we going to do if? What are we going to do if? What are you going to do? What am I going to do? We also are very aware of how fatigue affects us. And fatigue and hypoxia, even if we have oxygen on, we both get a little cranky if we've been on oxygen for a little too long and we've been at altitude for a little too long. And so I think we've learned how to be particularly careful and gentle with each other as we do that. And we also, we've spent a lot of time talking about how we fly together in the air. I don't know if many of you get to fly with spouses or really good friends, but we have some very specific ways that we talk, that we have not rules, but the pilot flying does one thing, and the pilot not flying, pilot monitoring, has another set of guidelines. So our pilot flying is the PIC, last word authority in the plane. Primarily responsible for flight handling. If we have the dog, the pilot not flying is a dog handler. The pilot flying files the flight plan, of course, does all the airplane controls, and up until very recently did the communications, because we all like to talk to the controllers. I don't know why. So now we've since gone to a model where the pilot not flying manages the communications, and that actually, it keeps the pilot not flying really engaged in the flight, and takes some of the burden off of the pilot flying. Gives you a little bit more headspace to do your planning, to do your brief. So the pilot not flying is responsible also for flight planning, for reviewing the route, looking to see if, what the other one missed, navigation, monitoring engine. Also, we have our pilot not flying manage the fuel. It's just something we do in that plane. Now communication, and then checklist. So we are good at working with checklists with each other. So that trip, by the numbers, was almost 5,000 miles. Our flight time outbound was 14.8 hours and 16.7 on the return. And 530 gallons of avgas. I did not know that.
You did not want to know that.
So, can we answer any questions?
Yeah, the autopilot. What was up with that? I mean, did you guys get that figured out?
We don't have an answer for it yet.
Really?
Yeah, and sad to say, the Baron is now grounded for a little while. That's a different story, but so we'll get it sorted out with Jeremy. Yeah.
We took a number of flights after this.
Yeah.
This summer and fall, and it hasn't recurred. We talked to Jeremy about it, and he basically said a one-off. When it happens one-off like that.
Did it just reboot and comes back a couple of minutes later?
It does. So when I was coming to Livingston, I basically rebooted it, and by the time I was on final, it came back.
Oh, okay.
And so, for example, what we could have done is asked for diverting vectors on the way in the clouds, and just gone into a hold, or they've just been diverted, rebooted, and it would have been fine. But frankly, we were already starting the approach. That it would seem okay to just keep going. The other thing we happened in Billings is they started vectoring us. We thought we were going to do vectors to final, so we did vectors to final, and then he vectored us to a fix out beyond the final approach fix. So then you got to scramble to add that back in. So keep the whole approach in until you know you're not going to need one of those. That's the first time it's happened to us in, I don't know, 6 years of IFR flying, but I've read about that before. It's like, don't take out the rest of the approach and go vectors to final until you know that's exactly what's going to happen.
But so it was just Montana, though, that it happened, right? I mean, the autopilot thing.
Well, it happened.
Oh, it is
yeah,
only Montana.
You're right. It was just Montana.
I'm thinking about this. Montana had the most expensive gas, the most expensive hotels.
And
something in the air there, maybe? I don't know.
yeah.
Good point.
We fly down to Albuquerque a lot, and where Betsy's folks live, and right in the Four Corner states, we have lost all of our GPS 2 different flights. Gone. I mean, all of a sudden, you just get no signal on both the 750 and the 650 simultaneously, 2 different antenna. And actually, the iPad, which doesn't just do US GPS, but also uses signals from Klonos, I think, as well, worked. And I mean, something, and I called the air traffic control, and they said, we haven't heard anything else. Another time they did say, yeah, someone else had the same problem. So, but it's in that same area right around Grand Junction. And it was like, and it didn't come back until we were landing in Twin Falls.
It came back when we got below 10,000 feet west of Salt Lake City.
Yeah. I don't know what happens, but
Yeah.
If you have such long endurance, why are you keeping your legs so short? Like, they look like they were like 3 to 3.5 hours.
Well, a couple reasons. One, we try to share the time as PIC in the plane, and we both find that we do a little bit better not flying quite so long legs. It just it helps us to get out, move around, and
we could do 4.5 easily without trouble, and we could each do 4.5, and we have done that other times. But after 9 hours, especially if you're, in oxygen, I might get my saturation up to 90%, as opposed to 98% saturation, which is what you normally have. And I want to tell you, at the end of the day, I'm a grumpy son of a bitch.
I used to, regarding accommodations, I used to always reserve something in advance myself, but I found out the best is call the FBO. Do you have a deal on a hotel?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we use Hampton, we use this. Take that. And then the second question, how do I get there? Oh, we got the car. Oh, they come and get you.
Yep.
Oh, you take a taxi. So let the FBO do everything.
Yeah.
It's a
I've been
great
impressed.
idea.
They always have great places to stay and have the best deals.
Yeah.
You're right, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
although when we went to, the last time we were in Boise, we've learned to go to the jet center that's on the north side of the field. There's a, what's that? Jackson, yeah. And Western Jet Center is really nice. It's on the south side of the field, but the hotel vans won't come and pick you up. So we started going to Jackson. And the last time we went to Jackson, we rented a car. And the gal, it was just this Go Rentals. And this gal, I went to the gal and she said, oh, we can get you, a reasonable car. It's no problem. And so she signed me up and we used this reasonable car for 9 miles. We drove it 9 miles. And it wasn't until it was Bill's like flying home and I was looking at my phone and I got the email receipt and I just about blew a gasket because it was $250 to drive 9 miles in this car. Do not use Go Rentals, you guys.
$300 if you went over 10 miles.
Well, we should have just slept in the back seat because it was more expensive than the hotel. Yeah. Yeah. This is not for the faint of heart. Yeah, Bill?
2 questions. Your checklist, you've got a system for everything. How do you do your checklist? And then whether I was right seat or had a right seater, it was always that individual that did communications. So how is it that you guys had the pilot flying, do the radio, and then switched to the alternate?
Well, I'll answer the second question first. Mm-hmm. We both, I think because we both fly single pilot IFR and we fly together, we're, I think, a little bit
Bossy.
Yeah, that's it. We're bossy.
And protective of exercising our skills.
Right.
And so I was flying with Jim Gruniason, our Baron instructor, last summer, and I was telling him about this flight, and he goes, why on earth are you doing it that way? The pilot not flying should be doing the communications. And we're like, okay, we'll do it that way. And then, what was your first question?
And then
checklist.
What I'm used to also is then the right seater reads the checklist.
Yep,
and
right seater.
How you did it.
Yeah, right seater calls out the checklist and left confirms.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what we do.
Yeah.
And then it's so good to keep the pilot monitoring engaged, and so having them on the radios and doing all the radio changes just keeps them. As opposed to saying, oh, I'm just going to doze off, as opposed to being really part of the flight. And I think anytime you fly with another pilot, and what we do is when you get in the plane, before you start, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is what do you want to do? If they just want to take a break and that's fine. But if they want to say, I'll do whatever you want me to do, then we say, okay, this is what we like to do. Are you willing to do it that way? And of course, they have to know how to work the navigator and be comfortable with radio changes and radio communications.
Oh, so then how do you do it as far as when you're getting a change of course or switching a frequency? Who handles that?
So if I'm pilot monitoring, I would change the frequency, and Betsy would go ahead and start changing the course. Usually, of course, it's usually going to heading at that point until you adjust the nav mode differently.
Okay.
And
So
the
I would
right
adjust
seat
the
pilot
GPS.
is, yeah.
She manages the autopilot and the actual heading change. And altitude changes.
And we, this is a little nitpicky, but we changed the frequency in the radio immediately. And then I just have this habit after flying with my dad for years and years and years, I always write the frequency down.
Absolutely.
And because I want to have it. If I lose comms, I'm not going to remember the number that was up there. So I always write them down.
Well, I'm a very big fan of that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your attention. Really appreciate it. Great seeing everybody.
Sorry we didn't have any exciting mishaps on the trip.
I'm not.
One thing I just want to say, I'm very impressed that you spent 5 days in Nantucket and you did say wicked awesome once in your presentation. That's a New England thing. Everything is wicked or awesome or wicked awesome. You know.
We heard it.
Oh, I know you did.